Welcome back to Snetterton for the second of our sprint races here this weekend in the Radical Challenge Championship. Lots of great racing as ever from the Radicals, and very shortly we'll be looking forward to this second race, which is again over 20 minutes of action around the 300 circuit. The way the grid lines up for this one is with Bradley Smith on pole. He had his teammate Evgeny Krychlev out for the earlier race. Jack Lang starts there second on the grid, and then back on row number 2. John McLeod, who got a podium in race number 1, and Steve Burgess, the champion for this year, lines up on the outside of row number 2. Brian Cordwell, earlier winner, sits there in 5th place, and Brian Murphy starts 6th on the outside of row number 3. So the final car into place at the back of the grid, which means again we get the 5-second board from the gantry, and all the drivers will now look towards the lights, which very shortly will go red, and then we'll be underway with racing. Who can make the best of the starts as we get underway? All the way nicely from the front of the pack. A few trying to chase through to get the gaps where they can. One of those being Brian Cordwell again after a cracking start, going every single way he can across the track back to the inside. He's going to find himself down in about 5th place. A few run wide in towards Richie's corner, but not too far wide to find themselves out there in the weeds. But they'll work their way then on towards Wilson for the first time. A little bit of a lock up there from one of the red cars in the mix. I think that was number 11, which is now being driven by Lee Bailey. He's trying to work his way through as best as possible. But for the lead, Bradley Smith has taken charge of this race. Jack Lang sits there in 2nd place, and John McLeod will bring the top 3 under control as they work their way down the short straight in towards Agostini for the first time. Also in the mix there you can see Brian Cordwell, earlier winner, a move being made by Joe Stables, who is still fighting of course for 2nd in the championship. He's got to win this race pretty much, and Jack Lang not to finish, but he's going to give it a good old go as he gets a little bit squirrely on the exit of Agostini as they work their way down towards Hamilton for the first time of asking. The leader of the race though doing a grand job out front, leading from the front, of course, from pole position. Bradley Smith in this black and green liveried Radical. Top 3 go through. Got other fights to watch out for as well, including that of Tony Wells, who again, by the looks of it, has made a pretty good start. The number 3 car working his way inside the top 5 places as the train of Radicals work their way down towards Brundle and Nelson for the first time. Bradley Smith, Jack Lang, John McLeod, your top 3. Brian Cordwell, and then behind that, Tony Wells trying to either defend or attack there. I think he was trying to attack, and he's made it work. He gets through in that all black car ahead of number 15, which is Jack Manchester. And then you've got our champion for this year, number 2, Steve Burgess, who sits just off the tail in car number 2, just outside the top 5 places. Steve's got a little bit of work to do here, but if any man can do it, Steve Burgess is the one that can. So the leaders come down towards the left-hander at Murray's for the first time of asking. This is the battle a little bit further back. There is Steve Burgess in car number 2, pushing as hard as ever there with the 2 wheels over the AstroTurf as they work their way on towards the main straight at full racing speed. Brian Cordwell, race 1 winner, sits there in 4th place. Tony Wells there now pulling away from Jack Manchester, and Steve Burgess has caught him up. So Steve Burgess works his way through, sits there in 7th position. Trying to do anything he can about Jack Manchester. Can he try anything at Wilson? He's on the outside line. Jack Manchester has gone defensive through the first part, but then down towards Palmer again. Steve Burgess will be challenging, trying to look for the inside line in towards the left-hander, which he's going to try for, and the gap is not quite there, unfortunately. So Steve Burgess has to sit and wait. A little bit of contact there between Andy Chissenden and, by the looks of it, the number 20 car of Ben Lane for this race. So those two just coming together, but no real harm done to the cars, as now Steve Burgess has gone through, but will it last on the exit of the corner, because Jack Manchester straight away fights back. He gets the inside run down towards Hamilton, and that should give him the place once again back in his favour, but then Steve Burgess hangs on round the outside, and that for him luckily gives him the inside run in towards Oggies. So has Steve Burgess, number 2, gone through? He'll be sitting behind this man Tony Wells if he has, and no is the answer to that one, because Jack Manchester in car number 15 still finds himself up the road and being a real thorn in the side for Steve Burgess. Leaders come off the straight once more. Again, pairing themselves off now to the top 2 together with Bradley Smith and Jack Lang 1st and 2nd. John McLeod now under attack from race 1 winner Brian Cordwell. They are pretty close together as well. Around about a second separates those two. And then behind in 5th place for now is that number 3 car, Tony Wells. For too much longer, I reckon going to be caught by Steve Burgess if he can get his way through. But for now, Jack Manchester keeping himself ahead in 6th place. On towards the centre straight come the leaders once more then. Bradley Smith just starting to open up the gap now. That time through it extended to 1.1 seconds. John McLeod then finds himself a further 1.8 seconds adrift. And here comes Steve Burgess, the frightening red car, looking for a move on Jack Manchester in towards the first corner. But again, not quite close enough to get to the inside line there, so he has to wait his turn once more. But already the lap's starting to tick away here, so Steve Burgess will have to get the job done pretty quickly. As we said, if he can get the job done on Jack Manchester, I think he could have a good attack on Tony Wells as well. He's been a long-time radical racer. He's done pretty good in recent years. Initially looking to finish with inside the top 10 of the championship. So there they go then, down towards Agostini. Here comes Steve again, number 2, looking for the inside line on Jack Manchester, but doesn't find himself close enough, so he has to sit there and await his turn. Far enough up the road of Brian Murphy in car number 57, so not really going to be worried about him. And you've got Jason Rishover in there as well, car number 23. Finds himself inside the top 10, just ahead of Joe Stables. Again, the man looking for second within the championship, but as we said, he needs to finish a long way ahead of Jack Lang to take that. So if Jack Lang continues to do what he's doing, he'll be good enough to take the runners-up spot in this year's championship behind Steve Burgess. Down off the straight then come the leaders once more. You can see the top 4 turning their way through, and now it is a lot closer between 5th, 6th and 7th. So Steve Burgess hasn't got through on Jack Manchester, but Jack has done enough to close in on Tony Wells. They all take Nelson pretty good, nice and tidy. No one running dramatically wide. Although through the bomb hole, Steve Burgess does, so he kicks up a little bit of dust. Down through Coram Curve, those 3 now come. This is, of course, the fight for 5th, 6th and 7th places. Just off the tail of the top 4 for now. Again, Steve Burgess runs wide there at the final corner at Murray's. If he does that too often, especially on an MSV circuit, he'll get the black and white warning flag, just to give him a precursor about his track limits. But Steve Burgess trying to use as much of the track as possible and a little bit more, just to keep on terms with Jack Manchester as they work their way in towards the first corner. There is Tom Harvey, now taking that car over from Brian Harvey, and here comes the number 80 on an attack as well. Tom Gladys, the pro driver within that car, gets himself through now, but of course that car started at the back of the field. Still a lot of ground to make up from Tom Gladys, but again, Tom Gladys has been around in racing for many, many years, and he's done many different forms of racing. There's another move there being made by number 10, John Caldwell, a spinner from race number 1, but now he's made a place up as well, trying to go with Tom Gladys in this encounter. There we can see one of the cars just peering through the Armco barriers there. This is a good little scrap going on. We've got number 52 involved in this one as well. That was a man who failed to finish race number 1, Mark Richards, and has dropped down the field quite dramatically as well. And he's having a good scrap there with Elliot Goodman in car number 28 as they work their way down towards Hamilton. 4 in a line, and the other one, just to mention in this battle, is number 99 at the minute, which is Konstantin Gukiev. So he's there in that machine, which turns its way now on towards Williams, trying to hassle the number 10 car of John Caldwell as much as possible. And then these 2 guys as well work their way on towards the Bentley straight. And you can see, look at that, the long train that gathers momentum once more. We've got Joe Stables and number 5 just up the road there, the number 5 car of Jason Reddin for this race. Again, one of the pro drivers, trying to do well, taking the car over from Paul Allen in race number 1. Oh, and a mistake there from John Caldwell. He loses not just 1 place, in fact he's going to lose 3 here by the looks of it. So 1 small mistake, and with Radical Racing being so close, that loses you, in this situation, 3 places. So John Caldwell, after making a move at the start of the lap, has now gone and lost 3 to the likes of those who were chasing and have now got their way through. There's Steve Burgess, still no luck in getting past Jack Manchester. He's tried on many occasions, but still Jack Manchester putting up enough of a defence to keep Steve, the champion, at bay here as they work their way in towards the Wilson hairpin. But now could be his opportunity. He gets a nice run down the inside line of Jack Manchester. No contact whatsoever, so keeping it as clean as ever is Steve Burgess. He now tries to work his way around the outside at Palmer. But in doing so, this is just allowing Tony Wells to put a slight gap now over those 2 chasing, and those 2 that are fighting as well down towards Agostini. This could be the best opportunity for Steve to go through. He's late on the brakes. He gets to the inside line. Can he hold it tight to the apex? Not really, but I don't think Jack Manchester was close enough there to get back through. So Jack now drops down the order and will find himself behind the number 2 car of Steve Burgess. So that's going to be 6th and 7th places now, as Tony Wells just have a slight lock-up in towards the right-hander at Oggies. But again, for Tony Wells, he finds himself now a good second or so up the road, so he's not going to be under pressure from these 2 chasing at the minute. But Steve Burgess, now he's clear, may have a good opportunity to try and close down in on Tony Wells. Then you've got up the road from that number 66 machine, just working his way through, which is Brian Caldwell. But that is one of the closest fights on the track for now. Turn our attention back here to the number 99 machine. Slight mistake there from Konstantin Gukiev. The The back end just sliding out there, but he managed to catch it and correct it as they work their way on towards the Bentley straight. They're a good half a lap back, and look at the speed that Steve Burgess takes through that corner. He was right on the limits there as he worked his way through Coram Curve. Just shows how hard he is pushing once more. There's Jack Manchester, just takes a little bit of a glimpse in the mirrors just to see who may be the next man in line. The next man I can tell you is number 23, which is Jason Rishova, but he's not that close, so Jack Manchester is not really worried about that. He can concentrate and focus his attentions on that car ahead and see if he can get his way back through past Steve Burgess. Slightly wide there from Tony Wells into the Wilson hairpin. Tony, who currently resides down in 5th place. Here's the fight between the man we mentioned a few minutes ago, Jason Rishova, now under attack from number 57, which is Brian Murphy. So Brian trying to work his way through the field. He started in 6th place. He's now dropped down the order into what's going to be 9th position by the looks of it. So Brian's got a lot of work to do. Sluggish start, but trying to get back into his rhythm now. He's got on his tail Joe Stables in car number 95, the man who finished 6th in race number 1. And then just off the tail of him, we've got number 5, which is one of those cars that's had a driver change. Jason Redding for this race, Paul Allen for the earlier race we had. 2 sprint races for this year in the Radical Challenge Championship, and of course a new introduction for this year is the slightly longer endurance race, which has been fascinating throughout this season. That'll be a 40-minute race to look forward to, race number 3 of the weekend. This is another battle we focus on as well. Number 11 is Lee Bailey, and he's got on his tail as they work their way down towards Hamilton, the number 20 car of Ben Lane. So those two scrapping over the lower run-ins of this Radical race as we turn our attention back to the man who sits in 3rd place. Final step on the podium for now, but is he being caught by our 4th place man? I think he is. So Brian Caldwell is on the chase. Steve Burgess in turn is on the chase as well in car number 2. A lot closer now to Tony Wells as they come up towards the line on this occasion. The gap was around about a second. This time across the line it's going to be cut down to about 0.3 of a second now. Steve Burgess looking for a move on the inside of Tony Wells as they work their way in towards Richie's corner. Not too much time left within this race now, so they're going to have to think fast about making these moves. Brian Caldwell makes a slight mistake up towards Wilson. He manages to regain himself, and again with the likes of Tony Wells and Steve Burgess fighting, he won't lose too much time, to be fair. So there goes through our 2nd place man Jack Lang. There in 3rd place is John McLeod, Brian Caldwell 4th, and this fight for 5th place between Tony Wells and Steve Burgess. This is where he got Jack Manchester past, but on this occasion again he wasn't quite close enough. He's very good on the apex though, is Steve Burgess. He keeps it nice and close to the left-hander there, which means he gets a better drive through on towards Hamilton. But can he make the move on Tony Wells? Well, in fact, he's lost a little bit of ground there. He made a slight mistake on the exit of Agostini, so he's going to have to try again as they work their way through on towards Williams. Nothing to choose between these two. Very experienced racers within Radical. Tony Wells and Steve Burgess have done many Radical championships, and they now find themselves in this brand new Radical SR3 RSX. Can Steve try for an attack down towards Brundle? Again, he didn't quite get the best of the runs onto the Bentley straight, so he has to sit there, he has to wait his turn and try and catch Tony Wells by surprise. Down towards the bomb hole they now go. And again, not really making many inroads in towards Brian Caldwell at the minute, so Brian's looking comfortable in 4th place. He's still got his attention set on our 3rd place man, John McLeod. And those two are separated by just under 2 seconds for now. On towards the centre straight then goes our 6th place man, Steve Burgess. Tony Wells still there in 5th as they cross the line once more. Steve has a little bit of a think about a move at the inside, but he may want to leave it until the last moment. That's probably your best place to make a move. Of course, you don't want to leave it too late and then make a mistake and have to try and regain those places. So Steve Burgess trying to think about what he needs to do here as he comes through Wilson again, gets another great run as a move is being made there by number 64. That's Tom Harvey, who now finds himself up ahead of Brian Murphy in car number 57. So Brian loses another place, drops to the tail end of the top 10 once more. And now being caught by number 5 as here comes Steve Burgess. A big lunge down the inside line, which is not going to work. The back end steps out and Steve Burgess has tried far too hard there. He got to the inside line. The back end was coming round. The brakes were on as much as he possibly could. But Steve Burgess a little bit frustrated there, I'm sure, trying to get past Tony Wells, and in the process he's made a mistake and he's dropped himself now down a few more places. So he's been passed by the likes of Jason Rashova, and who else would have gone through there? Joe Stables possibly would have got himself through. So we'll see if Steve Burgess can regain those. Here comes number 91 again, David Frankland, having a good scrap here with the SR1 of Andy Chittenden. Busy man this weekend, taking part in 6 radical races. As a man we haven't really spoke about in this one, Bradley Smith has been pretty dominant out front. He comes through on this occasion, and he'll now lead the race by, well, it was 3.7 last time round. Let's see if he's managed to extend it on this occasion. Jack Lang still there in second place. As Jack runs up towards the line now, the gap sits at 4.6 seconds. So he's doing enough just to remain ahead is Bradley. There's number 23, that's Jason Rashova, a man who started 12th in this race. He's now trying to work his way onto the back of Steve Burgess, I think that is. The resurgent Steve Burgess, who made that mistake. Yep, there goes Steve. And there is Jason Rashova. So in fact, back through has gone Steve Burgess within this race. So they turn their way through. This is the fight currently for 7th and 8th places. This one is a little bit further back, still between number 11 Lee Bailey and number 20, the chaser here at the minute, which is a car then, which has worked its way from 17th on the grid. This is Ben Lane. So Ben Lane is there at the minute, and the gap between those two is pretty much nothing, 0.3 of a second, as you can see, as Lee Bailey goes a little bit defensive. Ben Lane thinking about a move up towards Richie's corner, but again not quite close enough. Didn't get the best of the runners through Murray's, and the toe didn't really lend itself to making a move there, so Ben Lane still sits behind. This is the next of our fights that we can focus on. This is for 9th place, headed by Joe Stables. He's then followed by number 64 in the mix as well, as to the inside there, pulling out the way, is number 5. So is that a problem for Jason Redding? I think it possibly is. So he got out of the harm's way, he let everyone else through, and there could be a mechanical problem starting to affect that car, but he'll continue on his way as best as possible. There is Jack Manchester in this race at the minute, down in 6th position. And there is the recovering Steve Burgess, our champion for this year in car number 2. Jason Rashova sits behind that in car number 23. And this other battle to watch out for between Joe Stables and number 64, Tom Harvey, who has done really well actually. Tom Harvey started 15th in this one. He currently finds himself inside the top 10, so he's made up 5 places already. Sharing with his dad, Brian Harvey, who did the stint for the first race, and they'll be joined together for the slightly longer 40-minute enduro, race number 3 of the weekend. Behind them is number 57. You can just see through there Brian Murphy, and also number 52 goes through, which is a car outside the top 10 at the minute, and that is Mark Richards, who is, again, a man who should get finished this time round. He barely got off the line in the first race. Had to be recovered by the hard-working marshals here at Snetterton, who this time round have been untroubled because we've had a very clean race, no incidents amongst the front runners. There is a yellow flag though in the background there, we can just see, which has now been taken away. So maybe one of our lower runners has found themselves in a bit of strife, but they continue on their way. There goes Jack Manchester in no man's land at the minute. He's having a race on his own now after a good early battle. Finds himself in what's going to be 6th position. And we'll see if he can do anything about those ahead. Look out for Tony Wells up there in 5th. Here comes Brian Murphy there, number 57, now under attack from the number 52 machine, which is still Mark Richards. These two have been tied together for the majority of the race so far. Oh, there's been a little bit of drama there. They have been, again, close throughout this race. They are the number 11 car of Lee Bailey, and the number 20 recovering there is a man who was right on his tail at the time. It looks like they've come into contact. That's Ben Lane. They both get re-going, maybe with a slight bit of damage to the car, but they will continue within the race. Here comes Bradley Smith then up towards the line. He's about to put a lap on one of the cars here, which is number 9, Gary Patterson. Gary will be showing the blue flags, which indicates there's a quicker driver coming behind you. So Bradley Smith looking his best to get through here, which he does at the Wilson hairpin, as we now venture on to the last lap of the race for Bradley Smith. 20 minutes of racing, which have been pretty much untroubled, I have to say. Hasn't had too many threats. He got through early on past Jack Lang, and since then Jack Lang has just kept himself nicely settled in second place as well. Andy Chittenden is possibly going to be lapped as well before the race comes to a close. Lights just been switched off there from Bradley. He doesn't fear there's going to be any further traffic, so he now just gets back into his set rhythm. He hasn't opened up the biggest of gaps, to be fair. It's been around about 4.5 seconds for the last couple of laps. but it has been a consistent run for Bradley. There is the number 28 machine onto his last lap as well now. That's Elliot Goodman. Elliot's trying to chase down the number 10 car, John Caldwell, who's had a few mistakes within this race. And Steve Burgess is going to try and get one more place before the race comes to a close as well. Down the inside line, he's got his partner in crime back with him. Tony Wells, this time, keeps it clean. Doesn't run wide, doesn't lock the brakes, and doesn't go for a spin. So Brian Caldwell up there in 4th place. That is Steve Burgess through into 5th. But I don't think Brian will be caught in this closing lap. But Tony Wells will lose that last position inside the top 5. Bradley Smith then down through the bomb hole. Nicely done. He may just get Andy Chittenden into his view through Murray's. But apart from that, Bradley Smith has had a perfect race. He's done everything he's needed to do. He started on pole position. He got himself into the lead. He's led from start to finish pretty much. And Bradley Smith is going to take the 2nd race victory of the weekend in the Radical Challenge Championship. The first for him, though, as he comes up towards the line. Bradley Smith is showing the checker flag as he comes through. He'll be delighted with that. He can just peer in his mirrors to see where the 2nd place man is. Very relaxed after that race as he waves to the marshals after their hard work. 2nd place will go to Jack Lang there. In the end, finishes just a few seconds behind, 4.8 seconds to be precise. And for 3rd place, it's going to be John McLeod, or is it? Brian Caldwell gives him a great run to the line there, and John McLeod just pips Brian Caldwell, or holds on to 3rd place, by what's going to be 0.05 of a second. The closest finish for that 3rd place this weekend. So Brian Caldwell gets 4th, Jack Manchester 5th, there goes Steve Burgess in 6th. And for 7th place, it will be the likes of Tony Wells, although we find out after the race, Tony in fact was excluded from the results. So Jason Rashova is popping himself up inside the top 7. Joe Stables gets 8th. Mark Richards and Brian Murphy find themselves inside the top 10. But there are our podium finishes. 3rd place for John McLeod, 2nd for Jack Lang, and our winner for the first time this weekend, Bradley Smith, makes his way to the top step of the podium.
Each of the drivers as well, and then we'll get them together on the top step of the podium. No stranger to the top step of the podium, but no 2 races are the same, are they? Just tell us first of all about the start, Brad.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I made a good getaway off the line, and Jack pushed me really hard for the first couple of laps, so made a couple of errors. But, you know, once I sort of got settled into a rhythm, yeah, it was good.
And as far as the conditions are concerned, I mean, it's ever changing. The sun comes out. I would imagine that helps the tyres to heat up very quickly because it was quite bright and quite hot as well. Then the cloud comes over and you start wondering, is it going to rain now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not been an easy day, but hopefully that's the rain gone. But like you say, even with the temperature changing so much, every time you go out, it's like a different circuit.
It really is. Yeah. It's very odd, isn't it? And it's quite a long circuit as well. So presumably it could be very different over there at Brundle than it can be down here on the start-finish straight.
Yeah, big old circuit. So, you know, the lap times can change massively. So you really have to think about, obviously, track conditions in each corner, like you say.
Car good?
Very good.
There we go. Top man. Thank you very much indeed, Brad. Good to have a chat to you. And Jack, we reckon that's enough to secure 2nd in the championship. You reckon that as well?
Yeah, shame we maybe couldn't fight for the win overall, but I had a few problems earlier on the year. But no, I think personally I drove a perfect race for myself.
It's quite rare that a driver says it was a perfect race.
Yeah, well, I'd done laps that I didn't even think I could do today. I was low 1 minute 50s, and you know, I didn't think I made many mistakes, and he was just in a different league, so as usual.
Super work. Yeah, he's pretty good, isn't he? Unfortunately.
Yeah, after a couple of laps I was quite close. I thought I might be with a chance, but no, he got his head down, and I'm not quite on his pace just yet.
Everything okay as far as the car is concerned? When you got to the end of the race, you were having to look in your mirrors.
These guys are awesome. I was never going to catch these guys up. It's pretty cool to hear you doing laps that you never had done before, because I couldn't get anywhere near the pace of these guys. I had trouble with gears, and at one point even had to recycle the master, which is why Brian Caldwell got...
Did wonder, yeah.
Yeah, Oggies. And then I was lucky, really, just harassed him into Murray. And I don't know what the time sheets say, but they must be down to about 1,000th, I think, for 3rd place.
It was 50,000ths of a second.
Yeah, that'll do.
So that's it for race 2 of the Radical Challenge Championship. We've got the slightly longer race number 3 coming up. You can catch it right here on Radical TV on the Radical website.